Hello and welcome back to my small little library. Today we're gonna talk about the good and the bad books I read this year. To be honest, most of the books I read this year were firmly in the middle of the field, like most of them were 3 and 4 stars. I had quite a few 2 stars this year, but I had very few 5-star books this year. So there's gonna be a reread in the 5 stars because, to be honest, I didn't even have enough to do 5 favorites of the year, even though a 4-star could have been a favorite as well. I think that is, I think the 5 stars are absolutely the favorite, and if there's a reread, I think that's totally fine. Also, I think this video goes up on the 26th, so I hope you had really nice holidays, that you got to spend with family and really enjoy and just relax for those few days. I really hope that was the case for you. We celebrate just the two of us this year, so yeah, well, hopefully we will have had some really nice food. Obviously, I'm filming this before this, but yeah, I hope you had really great holidays. So let's start with the bad books and then go to the good ones to end the video on like a positive note, because, we shouldn't go into the new year on like negative notes, I feel like. The first negative book is a series because they were all equally bad, and that is the Maze Runner series. I read the complete series this year just because I wanted to get it over with. They got progressively worse each and every book, and I mean, you probably know what the series is about, but if you don't, there was a virus that pretty much killed a lot of humankind, and they threw some teenagers into like this maze to like search for cure, and our main character like wakes up in the maze, and then it goes from there, and all of our main characters teenagers, all of them are like typical teenagers. The problem is these books are full of plot twists that, like, so full, like every 10 pages, every 20 pages there comes a plot twist, so you start not really caring about them. And then our main character is unconscious so many times in the books. It was ridiculous, like absolutely ridiculous how much time our main character spends unconscious. It was crazy. So in the end, it just wasn't a nice story to read because you stopped caring about the plot twists like somewhere in the middle of the series, and nothing really made an impact anymore because, you could, like, it was so easy to recognize straight from the beginning that, like, it's pretty much a straight storyline, but the author is like, oh, look at that, and nothing matters in the books. So yeah, I found them to be really bad, to be honest, even for the time they came out in, because they obviously came out in like this whole YA dystopian craze that we had, in the 2000s, and yeah, they are not good. Then we are coming to a book I listened to as an audiobook, which is called The Conqueen of Hollywood by Scott C. Johnson. That was actually the worst nonfiction I've ever read, mostly because our authors seem to be kind of incompetent when it comes to writing a nonfiction book. It is about, well, I've forgotten a lot, but it is about a woman that conned men into doing stuff for her, buying camera equipment, stuff like that. She was just really like kind of getting money out of them, I think, was the gist of the story. But our investigator, like the author of the book, seemed to be so incredibly incompetent, and he kind of seemed to like the woman. And I don't know, he wasn't really critical enough. It was all in all really bad. I forgot a lot of it. It just really didn't leave an impression at all, except for the fact that it was really bad. And I mean, I've read a lot of like these like true crime-esque books that aren't like really like science thrillers, like non-fiction science thrillers, kind of. I listen to a lot of books about Theranos and that stuff, and I think the book was supposed to be something like those, but it just fell so flat because our author was so bad with like getting across what he wanted to get across, and then the book was way too sympathetic to the scammer, and yeah, it was just really like a whole mess. So yeah, I didn't really enjoy that book. I think it was a bad example for nonfiction. then we come to the most disappointing book this year, because I had high hopes and I was thoroughly disappointed. And that is Whale Fall. This book is by Daniel Cross and it was sold as a horror book. It is not a horror book. I wanted like creature horror, which definitely wasn't there. The book gets sold as a man gets eaten by a whale and his fight to get out of it. In all honesty, the book isn't totally bad, but it just isn't sold at what it is, because what the book is that it's a teenager who desperately wants to find his father's bones because everybody gaslights him into thinking that he's in the wrong for cutting contact with his father, who was incredibly abusive to him. Not physically, but incredibly emotionally and mentally abusive. And everybody is just gaslighting him because his father took his own life after he got cancer. And everybody's like, oh, you have to make peace. They all wanted him to make peace with his father whilst his father was dying. And so to make peace with the whole situation, our main character goes into the ocean and tries to get his father's bones back. And while he's down there, he gets swallowed by the whale. And the story we got told is like a chapter in the whale, a chapter of like of throwbacks to like his situation, to like what happened, talks with his father, all of that. So it's actually like a kind of coming of age story, like an emotional story about the abuse he has to go through and what happened, and not being believed by people, and people just like really horrible family members, you know. But it isn't a horror book about somebody being swallowed by a whale, because the swallowed by a whale thing is such a small part, and it just wasn't what I wanted to read. I think if I would have known what the book was actually about, I might have liked it a little bit better. Not really, because the family is portrayed as something positive, I feel like, but they were really, really bad. So I felt like it was kind of a weird narration when it came to that. But yeah, not good. It wasn't what it was described as, and that really, really disappointed me. Then we have the most disgusting book of the year, which is The Tooth Fairy by Graham Joyce. This is an older horror novel, and it is really horror, but it is pretty much an alternative telling of The Tooth Fairy, with the weird thing that the Tooth Fairy likes to display herself as like this sexy being to small boys. And then there's murder in there, and in the end, it's kind of like the Tooth Fairy is kind of like an imagination of a child who has anger issues, and it's really bad. The sexualization of like children in here is, oh my god, I can't even talk about it. This is horrible. It is horrible. I got it in a book box. I had no idea what would be in this book, but yeah, I think it's just, it doesn't go with me at all. So yeah, wouldn't recommend. And then we have the book that I found was just a disappointment as well, but like in a different kind. This is We All Fall Down by Rose Jabo, and this is kind of a fairy tale retelling, like a general fairy tale retelling, but it has characters in there that allude to different fairy tales and classic children's books, Alice in Wonderland, for example. And this is a queer novel, and this is the worst depiction of queer people I have ever seen. We have one character, for example, who I would describe as kind of non-binary, who is just really abusive, like physically, mentally, like totally abusive. But she kind of gets portrayed in kind of a positive light. And then we have the complete over-sexualization of everybody. I don't know why so many authors have a problem depicting queer people without overly sexualizing them. I think this is just not necessary, and it doesn't add to the story at all. Yeah, and then we have one character who has magic, who's our maiden of the story, pretty much. And she has the magic to switch genders, and the amount of people who are like who find her attractive in like one gender and not the other, and then the weird things that happen with it, it's just so weird. I think I personally think it's just a false thing to like it feels like a try to depict someone who's trans, but like this like magical, oh, you can switch on occasion. That feels so wrong. I personally didn't enjoy that, you know. And then also just the whole story fell flat. I don't think it's a good book. I don't think you should read it. I think there's so much better queer fiction out there that this one really has no place at the table. So those were all of the bad books I read this year. So now let's get to the 5-star read. The first one that we have is Desperation by Stephen King. This is a really classic Stephen King book. I love the horror. I love the setting in the desert, in like the small town, and things are going wrong, and there's a little bit of magic involved, and like everybody is fighting for their life, and they get together in a group, and like this has all of the like best things that Stephen King does in his books, I feel like. And it was so good. I really enjoyed it. If you haven't read this yet, probably most people have read it, but if you haven't yet, this is really classic Stephen King. The horror mixed with the great characters and all of this like social stuff that I think he's just really great at describing. So yeah, read this one. It's so good. Then we had really great fantasy, and this is the Guardians of the West by David Eddings, and this is book 1 of the Malloreon series, which is the second series in a row of series. And here we just got to revisit all of the characters from the first series, which I really loved. I feel like David Eddings is like one of the best fantasies when it comes to character descriptions, character growth, and just like it's a really character focused fantasy, and I loved it. I loved it so much. Also really classical fantasy, not really many like mythical creatures or something like that. It's just really focused in on like there's magic and like snake people, for example, but it's just mostly humans, if you know, mostly different types of humans. So yeah, love this. Then we have the Murderbot series, which I listened to all of them, but especially 5, 6, and 7, so the last 3 books of the series. All of them got 5 stars. I just love the Murderbot series. If you want to get a sci-fi series with a really awkward Murderbot as the main character who learns to like interacting with humans and learns to kind of get a little bit less socially awkward, best sci-fi series out there. I love it so much. So it had to be on this list because yeah, 5, 6, 7, I'm waiting for book 8 to come out. I don't know if there will be a book 8, but hopefully there will be. I need to get back to that series. And then I had another audiobook that I listened to, which is called A Taste for Poison, which was a fantastic nonfiction book about people who killed other people using poison. But those poisons were things that are, in other cases, medications for illnesses. So it was a really interesting book about the medication that can also be used as poison, like when you misuse medication, that you can actually really hurt people with it, and how people used that in history to really hurt other people, and how they were found out, and how that all worked out. Love it. A great true crime book, but it was really scientific. It's by Neil Bradbury. He did a really great job describing it all, and was really respectful, I felt like, from the descriptions, because it focuses on the medication. I think insulin is one thing, for example. It really focuses in on that, and then he does describe the cases and how it was used, you know, and misused. But the focus is really on the science behind it, which was really great. And then we have the last favorite of the year. And that is The Lord of the Rings, because I did a reread of The Lord of the Rings, because last Christmas I got this wonderful version of The Lord of the Rings. My partner gifted it to me. It is an incredible version. I think it's the most complete version that is out there, because, you know, they tend to find new things that Tolkien had written. It does also come with maps, so let me see if I can show you. It comes with the maps and with the illustrations. I don't know if they are Tolkien's illustrations, but I do, like, I really love them. They might be... they are Tolkien's illustrations. So yeah, this is the most wonderful version of The Lord of the Rings. I really, really love this book. And yeah, so I did a reread when I received the book. It took me quite a few months, I think, because, you know, it's not a small book, but yeah, The Lord of the Rings, it's always a favorite. And because I had so little favorites this year, I'm bringing it back for this list of books. So yeah, maybe you could leave your favorites and your least favorite books in the comments down below. I would really love to hear what books you found to be really amazing this year. Maybe I can get some inspiration of new books I want to get. That would be really, really great. I'm really in need of good books because I have a lot of my books on my TBR which I'm not that excited for anymore, and they tend to be like 2 to 3 star books. So I really need some exciting new books. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you had really nice holidays, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.